Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Hello. Oh, I'm echoing or something. Hi, Amanella.
Hello. This is like tripping us out because it's inverted and I feel like a weather person.
We're backwards.
Oh, here. How about that? There.
That works. Here we go.
Okay. Is that better?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
I've gone to help with technical stuff. Okay, so we'll get started with an intro. So Emma and Ella are persons with lived experience and admins of the Facebook group PES, A Pathetic Excuse for Support, and are mental health advocates and students at Camosins College Community, Family, and Child Studies. Can you just hold on one moment? Sorry, I could just hear myself in the other room. That's really loud. All right. Okay. So to begin, would you mind sharing a bit of your story with us and your relationship to BPD?
Yeah. Do you want to go first? You can go first. I feel like we have very similar stories. I've been struggling since I was about 14. So I went through the child and youth system. And then just when I turned 17, I started going to Jubilee and seeing an adult psychiatrist. And that's when they first started talking about BPD and how I have traits, because it's super weird. They can't diagnose you until you're 18, but you can have like traits up until you're 18. So I didn't get an official diagnosis until I was 18. It was kind of like a bittersweet moment being diagnosed, because it was nice to know that the stuff I was going through, like I had a label and I could be like, it's not just me, I'm not going crazy. But then of course all the stigma that's around it kind of made it hard to have this diagnosis, because we've been told like you just won't get admitted to hospital and all this stuff. And so I think it's nice knowing that it's not like me, there's something to blame for it, but hard in the sense you can't really get away from the stigma that's attached to it. So I guess that's sort of quick sum up of what I've gone through.
Yeah, I have a similar story. I've been struggling since I was 11. I got, like Ella, in and out of VGH and then PES as well. I was diagnosed with BPD, I think about a year ago. I didn't know I was diagnosed until just recently, actually. They always said that I had traits, but I didn't know I had an official diagnosis. Like Ella said, I've been told as well I'll never be admitted to one of the inpatient units in Jubilee because of BPD, which doesn't make much sense, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's really common that we hear a lot of people that come through our group that they started seeing symptoms around the age 11. That was the same with me, and that then they don't get a diagnosis until they're 18 or so. And, we even had some people that come to the group that are in their 60s or 70s, and they didn't even know that they had the diagnosis of BPD their whole life because someone was afraid to tell them because of the stigma. And they found out because they got their hospital records. Like, that's a really, common story that we hear. And we believe that it's important to have early intervention and the proper diagnosis at a young age if that's what's actually happening. And not just get kind of like, this tossed around like BP traits or, a different diagnosis because, there's actual, treatment out there, DBT-A, for example, and even DBT steps, in schools that can really, help youth to have a better outcome. So wondering what your thoughts are on getting proper diagnosis under 18 even, or proper treatment.
Yeah, I think it's definitely frustrating that they can't diagnose you until you're 18.
Well, they can, they just don't want to.
Yeah, I think too, like, I remember a psychiatrist at Jubilee told me, like, you have this diagnosis now, but I think people think it's like a death sentence and you're going to have this for the rest of your life and you're going to struggle for the rest of the life. But he's like, if you go through DBT and you do what you're supposed to do, like, you can live a full life and you could not struggle when you're like 60. Like, of course, you're still going to have your ups and your downs, but it doesn't have to be as debilitating. And so I think after he like told me, hey, you have BPD, but there's these options, it felt kind of nice. But then you go and you try to like seek that help and you like, oh, where is the DBT groups? Oh, there's one on the island. Okay. And you're like, okay, now there's a couple in Vancouver, but they're waitlist. And so I think having more options for people and affordable options, and not like, it should just be a skill that every therapist know. Like DBT it doesn't have to be specifically for borderline personality disorder. But yeah, I don't know your thoughts.
Yeah, I might be doing the DBT group through USTAT in the fall. But yeah, there's like hardly anything on the island, to the point where my like team was looking into, I don't know if you know it, it's called McLean's, which is the psychiatric hospital in Boston that specifically has a BPD kind of unit.
Yeah.
But it kind of sucks that I would have to fly all the way to Boston to get, some treatment. But
yeah, and I mean, that's the situation that's happening, especially for youth on the island, is that, it's either, go to Vancouver. I've also heard about going to Boston, get on a wait list for a year, and that's typically in Vancouver. I haven't really seen anything on the island, unless it's a program that was happening and then it, got funding taken away, or else it's like another pay program. It's just far and few between. It's very inaccessible. Lots of red tape, wait lists, multiple barriers. And yeah, that's what we're seeing too. So services are really inaccessible, especially for youth. And, part of it's this, like you're saying, a lot of medical professionals are, misinformed, I think, about diagnosing, or afraid to diagnose at a young age. And that's the stigma around BPD. And then there's just not enough funding for it. And I don't think that's a good enough reason to not, find a way. So you spoke a little bit about the need for accessible services. Can you discuss more about the stigma that you find that people with BPD face?
I feel like the biggest one is from medical professionals themselves, which is kind of strange because usually the ones that give you the most stigma are the ones that actually diagnosed you, and you're like, that's kind of odd. But I think the biggest thing that I found is just like the fact that going to the hospital and they say that they're not going to admit you, but am I going there because of my BPD, or am I going there because of my depression? And so it's really strange that because you have that label on your medical record, you don't get the help you're supposed to. And I think it's like, I think the biggest thing is, oh, you're going to get attached to all the hospital staffs, but I think that can happen with anybody. I don't think that's specific to BPD. And like, I guess you can't treat BPD in the sense of like a 1 week admission at the hospital, but that stabilization period, I think, is really, really important. And to just like not do that because the consequences. I think that's unfortunate. And just the psychiatrist, like I think it's really hard, and it sucks because they diagnose you with BPD and they say like, this is what you have, but now we can't help you. And so it feels like they just do that so they don't have to put in the work, which is really frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When they were thinking that I had BPD a little while ago, my psychiatrist was saying that he didn't want to diagnose me with it, even though he did think I had it, just because then other like counselors and everything won't want to work with me if they know that I have the diagnosis.
That the counselors didn't want to work with you if you had BPD?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's this unfortunate misconception that people with BPD can't get better. That's a wastebasket diagnosis, and that people with BPD are difficult to treat, or attention-seeking, dramatic, manipulative, all these things. So there's a lot of labels and stigma that are put on people living with BPD, and then medical professionals, are averse to working with them, and so it's no wonder that there's not a lot of services, or there's a lot of inaccessibility, the multiple barriers to getting access to treatment, and then just even like when working, with professionals, there's just this, I don't know, animosity or whatnot, and so I think that's something that we hope to change and bring more awareness that there is hope, there is recovery, there is proper treatment out there that can actually work, and that it's not, this death sentence like you mentioned, and that there is a possibility for a life worth living, as Marshall Anahan says. I just think there's just so much outdated old information about BPD, and that they're difficult to treat. So I just think the more information that we get out there, the better.
Hard too, because for me, I guess there's like not different types of BPD, but different ways that they're presenting, and so I have like not high functioning, I hate that word so much, but like quiet BPD. So
right. Yeah,
it's like inwards. And so I think that's really hard for me, because all the information that comes up online isn't about that. It's all about like these outwards expressions. And so I think that's really hard for me, because I'm constantly doubting myself. I'm like, do I actually have this? Like nothing. I don't do any of those things. I do them inwardly. And so I think having more information about not the different kinds of BPD, but the different ways that they present.
Well, they say there's 256 different characteristics of BPD, so I'm not surprised that you get met with finding yourself trying to figure out like, what does this look like for me, because it does look different for a lot of people. So what is some of the advocacy work you are doing currently through your PES group, and what is the change that you wish to see?
Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Me first. So I don't know if people know, but we started a Facebook group called PES, a pathetic excuse for support. I thought it was a funny play on words. PES stands for Psychiatric Emergency Services, in case anybody didn't know. But we were seeing our friends go into PES and basically be denied services because there's nothing they can do. And we experienced that going into PES, begging for help, being dismissed like hours after a suicide attempt, just like completely, like people are dying and people are taking their lives because of this. And so we didn't just want to sit back and watch this happen. So we started a Facebook group. Emma's mom had the idea. She's like, there has to be other people out there. And I don't think we expected to get 2,000 people on our Facebook group, but we have 2,000 people now, which is insane. And we've talked to the premier, and we've talked to managers and directors at PES. We have bi-weekly meetings with the vice president of clinical coordinations for South Island. It's frustrating to see how many people knew this was happening and how many people realized how bad the services were and yet didn't do anything. Like, our earliest story goes back to 2007. And so it's really sad that this is what it takes for change to happen. But yeah, I was very cautiously optimistic when we first started meeting with Aylin, but I think hopefully change will come, and I think it's going to be a process, but if they're doing the things that they have been promising to us, I think we'll see an improvement. I think once you tackle the issue with PES, then it's looking at the mental health system as a whole, because inpatient facilities and inpatient treatment is just like a small fraction of what needs to change. So yeah, I guess step one, figure out PES. Step two, education and outpatient resources and stuff. So I don't know about you, but I found when we started doing this, it felt really simple. Like, just fix PES, just like do it. And then I was like, oh wow, there's actually a lot more to it, and it's a lot bigger. And I think too, when you're dealing with people, like, everybody's really emotional about it. Like, it's a hard thing to talk about, and so when you add the emotions into it, I think it makes it even that much harder. But I think slowly but surely we're getting there.
Okay, great. What has been the most helpful in your healing journey so far? I know it's kind of feels maybe that it's just beginning, but has there been anything that's been helpful in resourcing?
I would say that the most helpful has just been like sharing my story and talking about it. I think there comes a lot of comfort in knowing that I'm not alone. And just being honest with people. I think it's hard to be like, hey, I'm really struggling, or hey, this is what I need. But I think that has been the most helpful. Definitely still waiting for some other resources to fall in line, but I think that's probably the thing that I've been doing the most.
Yeah. It's similar to Ella. I think just having people around you that you can trust. And it's really complicated when, like, we've been best friends for what, 3 years?
Yeah.
And we have very similar stories. Finding people that understand or try to understand some of what you're going through. It's been really helpful. Yeah.
But also, like, being honest with each other. I think there's definitely periods
Boundaries,
where I think we've gotten better at setting up boundaries, but it's hard when you're like both have BPD and both playing off each other's emotions. It's not funny, but we always say, because like one thing of BPD is like not copying people around you, but like picking up traits.
Like chameleon.
Yeah, and so we're like, what's our personality? Like, if I'm copying you and you're copying me. But boundaries I think are important, and leaning on each other when we need to, but also being able to realize that there's other people around us when we can't help each other.
Makes sense. Okay. And what would you say are like gifts or positive traits do you see from folks with BPD have?
Just empathy, I think.
Emma's biggest thing is when people are like,
I hate it when people say that.
I'm an empath, but I think with BPD,
big empathy.
Yeah, like you feel emotions when you have BPD, and like I'll always people say like you're a super feeler, and it's a difficult thing to deal with because you feel things so heavily, but it's also a huge gift. Not everybody's able to like feel the room and see how people are feeling, and so I think that's like probably the biggest thing is just like you feel emotions so deeply, but you're also able to connect with people more because you have those emotions.
I hear so much negativity about people with BPD, but I feel like there's so many gifts and positive traits also that, kind of get dismissed, like you mentioned one about empathy and because we're such feelers, like I can go into a room and I just like absorb everyone's emotions. And I mean, that can, be hard at times, but also that can be a really positive trait to be able to be empathic, like you're saying. And I've met some of the most like creative, passionate, intelligent people in our group. And yeah, and I think that gets really overlooked sometimes because of the highly emotional kind of, sides that kind of are like outbursts or whatever that get seen. Yeah, that overshadow it sometimes. So I appreciate you mentioning that piece. The last question I have, and then there might be a few minutes for Q&A, is what is something that you would like someone newly diagnosed or still struggling with BPD to know?
I feel like since we're both like kind of recently officially diagnosed, I think one thing that I struggled with that I mentioned earlier is like the way that my BPD presents isn't how it's written about and how it's talked about in all these articles and stuff. But like self-validation is, I'm definitely still working on it, but don't doubt yourself. Like if a medical professional, like obviously like if you don't think your symptoms line up, like question it. But if a psychiatrist who you've been seeing for X amount of years is like, I think you have this, don't doubt yourself. Like try not to invalidate yourself. Your symptoms are valid, your pain is valid, and the way you present and the way you show your symptoms doesn't matter if you're still suffering the same amount. So validate yourself. It's hard, but I would say that's probably the biggest thing I would say.
Yeah. I think it sounds really scary. And you, like Ella said, you look it up and it does sound scary.
Yeah. Go to the right websites. There's a lot out there that aren't great.
Yeah. But yeah, just that you're going to figure it out. You'll learn a lot with your diagnosis.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Is there anything else that you'd like to add that I didn't get a chance to ask you?
I'll probably think about it after we.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and also you have your Facebook group. If anyone wants to add themselves to it, is the PES, Pathetic Excuse for Support group. And we still have a few minutes. If I'm just gonna see if there's any questions on here. Would you mind answering a few questions if anyone has any the last few minutes? So if anyone has any questions for Emma and Ella, we have a few minutes. Just gonna check on here. Doran mentioned that there is an alternative resource for young women aged 13 to 18, Sunrise Residential Treatment Center, Utah, closer than Boston. So that's interesting to note. Yeah. And we just launched our new website, the bpdbc.ca, and we have some of our youth resources on there if anyone is interested in viewing that. And yeah, I was actually just trained in DBTA. It was interesting. They add the walking the middle path and adding the multifamily skills unit to it or component. Yeah, so we definitely need more on the island, and I hope that we can bring more youth resources because I know that it's hugely needed here. And I mean, one of our goals is also to bring some like early intervention and prevention into schools. So DBT steps is another program for youth. So people don't have to be diagnosed with BPD. Like it's for like prevention programs. So they give it to the whole school, or like a whole grade, for example, and then yeah, they might help like a certain student and offer them like more support. But the program is like it's like life skills. Like, like you didn't learn emotional regulation skills in school, most likely no one really did. This is like the program to help learn that. So we would really like to see that come into schools too. So John Duggan has a question. What do you do to support yourself when you are feeling low? A question for Emma and Ella. So maybe some skills that you use, or like do you, what resources, what inner, outer resources?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is just like reaching out to my support system. So my mom's a huge support in my life. So definitely reaching out to her and just like making people aware that like I'm struggling. So telling my counselor and my psychiatrist, being like, I'm struggling, I'm not feeling well right now, and getting them to support me. But I guess personally, just trying to do the opposite of what my brain wants to do. So instead of laying in bed, opposite but yeah, so just it's hard because it's easy just to sink into the low feelings. But yeah, reaching out and telling people that you're not doing well, it sounds easier than it actually is. But
yeah, I think I still struggle with reaching out. So what I really like to do is I like to like draw and stuff like that.
She's a really, really good artist too.
I feel like I'm definitely, there's another one. I've been struggling for so long that feeling low is more comfortable to me than not.
Getting better is really scary. I don't think people talk about
it's comfortable.
Yeah.
Because it's so long, but yeah.
I'm reading this question, not just blankly staring at the screen.
Well, we only have 2 minutes left till the end, and I just wanted to mention that our next interview up will be Shane D at 1:00. And if you haven't got a chance, he has we posted this morning a piano piece by him playing Faded by Alan Walker. If you haven't got a chance to check that out, it's on our page now. It's a beautiful piano piece, like 4 or 5 minute piece. Last quick question by Doran. Do you have an idea of people signing up to your PES Facebook group? Can you estimate the percentage that identify as boys or men?
Yeah, we're just looking.
It's not the highest.
I think it's hard too, because a lot of the stories that get posted anonymously are from men and from like minorities, so Indigenous folks, trans folks. But yeah, I would say
there's like maybe like a tool.
Yeah, we're looking at that.
There's some.
If we find it, we'll let you know. But yeah, I would say like less than 25%. Maybe higher. 30%.
Yeah, I don't No,
Yeah.
never
Story wise, I would say like 25% are from male identifying folks, but yeah.
Great. Well, Lyrica, just to answer, answer your question, on our website, we have a BPD resources page. It has a whole list of peer-reviewed website recommendations. If you would like to check that out under our resources section, and if you can't find that, it's either under resources or under our services, and then it will say pandemic resources, BPD resources. And if you're having trouble finding it, you can always private message me on our messenger, and I can email it to you or PM it to you. Because we know that there's a lot of negative websites out there, and we want to make sure that people are getting all of the correct information. So we scoured the internet and came up with our own list. So if anyone wants that, you can just PM me or find it on our website. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Emma and Ella. I really appreciate all the work that you're doing, and keep up the great work, and with your advocacy work and also with your own journey.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're really welcome. Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye.